Welcome to Hope Stories, where one night beneath an old oak tree changes everything. Imagine being 22, 7 months pregnant, and told by the people you love most that you're no longer welcome in their home. No plan, no money, no one to call. What would you do? This is a story about survival when all seems lost, about the fragile line between despair and redemption, and how the smallest act of kindness can ignite a fire strong enough to rebuild a life. But it's also a story of secrets, of love born in unexpected places, and of the heartbreaking question, who truly deserves a second chance? Stay with us, because what happens to our heroine will challenge everything you think you know about family, forgiveness, and courage, and it all starts on that cold night under the oak. The night air clung to Emily's skin like a cold whisper, her fingers trembling as she clutched the thin hoodie tighter around her swollen belly. 7 months pregnant, 22 years old, and homeless beneath the gnarled branches of an old oak in a forgotten Ohio park. The streetlights hummed overhead, flickering as though they too were unsure they wanted to witness her shame. Her father's last words echoed with cruel clarity, "You've ruined this family." Her mother's silence hurt more than the yelling. Chris, the man who had promised her forever, had simply vanished, leaving a voicemail colder than the November wind. "Get rid of it. I'm not doing this." Emily pressed a hand against her stomach, feeling the flutter of life within. It was the only thing anchoring her when the rest of her world had turned to ash. She had $20 in change stuffed into a worn canvas bag, along with a single photograph of her parents back when smiles were effortless. Hunger gnawed at her ribs, but shame gnawed harder. She could beg. She could call the shelter hotline scrawled on the bus stop bench, but pride and fear kept her rooted to that park bench, praying no one would notice the girl with the too big hoodie and the secret growing inside her. At dawn, the sound of polished shoes on cracked pavement made her heart lurch. A man in a tailored navy suit paused beneath the oak. Ryan Donovan. She didn't know his name yet, only that his presence radiated the kind of control she'd never had. His jaw was clean-shaven, his watch gleamed, and yet there was something in his eyes, something raw that made her flinch less when he crouched down. "You look like you haven't slept in days," he said simply. Not pity, not disgust, just observation. Emily almost told him to leave. Men in suits didn't stop for girls like her unless they wanted something. But Ryan didn't ask for her name or her story. Instead, he extended a business card with a calmness that felt rehearsed yet sincere. "I manage a property outside the city. There's a guest house. Work to be done. You need a roof. I need help. That's it." She wanted to laugh in his face. This sounded like the start of a terrible movie or a trap. But then Ryan added quietly, almost like a confession, "Someone once helped me when I didn't deserve it either." Against all reason, she followed him. She told herself it was temporary, that she could leave any time. But the sprawling white farmhouse on the edge of New Albany felt like stepping into another world. Ryan didn't pepper her with questions. He gave her space, a warm meal, and a key. Days turned into weeks. She answered emails, organized invoices, and slowly her body stopped flinching at every sudden sound. Ryan treated her with an unexpected gentleness, cooking enough dinner for two, asking about the baby like he genuinely cared. And that terrified her more than cruelty ever had. Then one night, Chris called. His voice, sharp and detached, sliced through the fragile peace she'd found. "Get rid of it, or don't. Not my problem." Emily sat on the bathroom floor, the phone slipping from her hand, tears hot and relentless. That night, she made a silent vow. Lucas, she had chosen the name quietly, would be born, with or without anyone's blessing. When she emerged, Ryan was waiting outside the door, leaning against the wall with an expression that didn't pry. He just said, "You don't have to do this alone," and somehow she believed him. Spring crept in with a strange warmth. Emily began to laugh again, cautiously, like it might shatter. She and Ryan fell into a rhythm. Morning coffee, shared dinners, conversations that stretched late into the night. But the more she felt safe, the more guilt pressed on her ribs. She hadn't told him everything. She hadn't told him how her parents had thrown her out like trash, how her mother's eyes brimmed with tears she refused to let fall. Then one evening, as the sky blazed orange, her phone rang. A voice she hadn't heard in 3 months, cracking like old paper. "Emily, it's Mom." Linda's words tumbled out: regret, shame, a whispered plea to see her daughter in secret, while Michael, her unyielding husband, was at church. Emily's heart warred with itself. The girl who wanted her mother's arms back versus the woman who remembered being shoved out the door. Ryan, listening silently from the porch steps, finally said, "People make terrible mistakes. The question is what they're willing to do to fix them." When Emily walked into the cafe days later, Linda's face was lined with 10 extra years. Her mother cried when she felt the baby kick, whispering, "He has a name?" Emily hesitated, then answered, "Lucas." For the first time, hope felt less like a wound and more like a fragile bridge being built. But bridges can collapse. Late one humid evening, as fireflies blinked outside Ryan's farmhouse, Emily woke to a sharp pain low in her belly. 3 weeks too soon. Panic clawed at her chest as her water broke on the kitchen floor. Ryan's face went pale when he saw her clutching the counter, breathless. The hospital blur, sirens of monitors, the cold scent of antiseptic, doctors muttering about preterm labor, folded into one moment, Ryan's hand gripping hers. "I'm not leaving," he promised, and he didn't. Hours later, the wail of newborn lungs split the sterile room. Lucas arrived small but fierce, his cries punching holes in all the pain that came before. When the nurse placed him on Emily's chest, she thought her heart might burst. Then she looked up and saw Ryan's tears. The man who had found her under an oak was crying for a child not his own. Or maybe, she thought with a shiver, he could be. Weeks later, as summer painted the sky gold, a black sedan pulled into the farmhouse drive. Michael Donovan, the man who'd thrown her out, stepped out holding an old photo of Emily at age 5 on his lap. His eyes, once steel, shimmered with something new. "May I meet my grandson?" he asked, voice breaking. And behind him, Linda stood taller than Emily had ever seen her, no longer hiding. What Emily didn't know as she handed Lucas over, heart pounding, was that Ryan had a secret of his own, one that could either heal them all or rip apart this fragile chosen family. Would you have forgiven Linda and Michael after what they did to Emily? What would you risk for a second chance at love and family? And just when Emily thinks her story has found peace, a buried truth about Ryan's past is about to turn everything upside down. The late summer evening hummed with the sound of cicadas as Emily rocked Lucas on the porch, the golden sky dipping into violet. For the first time in months, she felt something like peace, her baby safe against her chest, her mother's visits no longer stolen moments. Michael had even held Lucas that afternoon with trembling hands, his rigid posture softening when the infant curled a fist around his finger. It felt like healing, until she noticed the way Ryan had gone quiet. He smiled, he asked about Lucas's feedings, but his eyes drifted somewhere far away. That night, after Lucas finally slept, Emily found him by the barn, staring at the rows of corn swaying under the moonlight. "You've been distant," she said, heart thudding. "What's wrong?" For a moment he didn't answer. Then he turned, and there was no calm businessman in his expression, only raw conflict. "There's something I should have told you months ago," he began slowly. "Something about why I stopped that morning under the oak. It wasn't just pity or chance." Emily felt her stomach tighten, a cold edge to his tone she had never heard. "What do you mean?" she asked. Ryan drew a breath like a man preparing to jump off a cliff. "Years ago, I was married. We were trying for a baby. She got pregnant, and then I wasn't there when she needed me. Work came first. She lost the baby, and I lost her. I told myself I wouldn't fail someone like that again. When I saw you, Emily, homeless and pregnant, I saw my second chance. But there's more. Chris, I know him." The name hit her like a slap. "You know Chris? How?" Ryan's voice was heavy. "He interned at my firm last year. I didn't connect the dots until after you moved in. I fired him for harassment after multiple complaints. He begged for another chance. I never knew his girlfriend was pregnant. I never knew it was you until I overheard his voicemail that night you were crying. I should have told you, but I thought it would drive you away before you were ready." Emily's breath came shallow. The betrayal wasn't that Ryan had known Chris. It was the months of silence. The man she trusted with her life had kept this from her. "So what? This has all been some guilt trip? A way to fix your conscience?" Her voice cracked under the weight of fear and anger. Ryan stepped closer, shaking his head. "No, I love you, you and Lucas, But I should have told you the truth from the start. I didn't want my past or Chris's poison to taint what we were building. Emily turned away, tears burning. The old wounds of abandonment roared back, her father's rejection, Chris's coldness, and now this. Was she just someone to save, not someone to love? And worse, if Michael discovered Ryan's link to Chris, would he use it as proof his daughter's life had spiraled into shame? She thought of Linda finally standing up to her husband, of Michael holding Lucas with awe. This secret could destroy all of it. Behind her, Ryan's voice broke. I'll tell Michael myself if you want, or I'll leave if that's what you need. But don't doubt for a second that I'm here because I choose you, not because of guilt. Emily stood in the moonlight, her heart splitting between gratitude for his honesty and terror of what it meant. A baby stirred on the monitor inside. The sound made her ache with the weight of the decision forming in her chest. Could love survive this tangled web of past sins and second chances? Or was some truth too heavy to bear? Do you believe Emily should forgive Ryan for hiding his connection to Chris? Or will this revelation shatter the fragile family they've built? And what would you have done in her place, torn between love and betrayal? As dawn approaches, Emily must decide whether to fight for this new life or let the shadows of the past consume it. And the choice she makes will change everything. Emily barely slept that night, the weight of Ryan's confession pressing against her ribs as tangibly as Lucas's steady breathing in the crib beside her. Dawn seeped through the curtains, soft and golden, but it didn't soothe her. Every look Ryan had given her since she moved into his life replayed in her mind. Every kindness, every unspoken promise, and now colored with the doubt of whether it had all been penance for a ghost of a baby he once lost or guilt for firing Chris. By mid-morning, Linda arrived with a bag of muffins, Lucas cooing at her as if nothing had changed, but Emily could barely meet her mother's eyes. Michael had come along too, waiting awkwardly outside by the truck. When his gaze fell on Ryan standing in the doorway, something flickered. Suspicion, maybe recognition. Emily couldn't tell. Her heart clutched. Did he already know? Over lunch, tension swirled thicker than the steam off Linda's coffee. Michael finally broke it. I saw a photo once, he said flatly, eyes on Ryan. You and that intern who stirred trouble at your firm last year. Chris, wasn't it? Emily froze. Ryan's jaw tightened. Michael's voice sharpened. Did you know my daughter's ex before all this? Did you know while she slept under a damn tree? The silence that followed was unbearable. Ryan didn't lie. Yes, he said quietly, but I didn't connect it was the same girl until later. And when I did, I was afraid telling her would drive her away before she knew she was safe. Michael's chair scraped back violently. So this has been charity? Guilt? Some savior complex? His words cut deeper because they echoed Emily's darkest fear. Linda tried to interject, but Michael's voice thundered on. My daughter needed a father, not another man making decisions about her life behind her back. Lucas startled at the noise and began to cry, and that sound splintered Emily's paralysis. She stood clutching her son, facing her father. Enough. You threw me out when I needed you most. Ryan may have made mistakes, but he stayed. He loves Lucas. He loves me. Can you say the same? Her voice shook, not just with anger, but with the terror of what she was admitting aloud for the first time. Michael's face faltered, grief and shame warring across it. But before anyone could answer, tires crunched on gravel outside. A beat-up sedan pulled up, and the last voice Emily wanted to hear carried across the yard. Em, we need to talk. Chris stepped out, thinner, eyes darting nervously. I heard about the baby. I want to see my son. Time seemed to collapse. All the pain of that voicemail months ago slammed into her. Ryan moved instinctively to her side, but Emily held up a hand, heart pounding. Chris's gaze flicked between Ryan and Michael, and the smirk that tugged at his lips made Emily's stomach churn. Interesting. The man who fired me playing house with my ex. Maybe a judge will find that relevant when I ask for custody. The threat hung in the humid air, shocking everyone into silence. Emily's arms tightened protectively around Lucas as he whimpered. Was this what love and safety had built toward? A courtroom battle with a man who had abandoned her, fueled by spite. Her father's face was stone. Ryan's fists clenched at his sides. Emily felt something ignite inside her, fierce and unyielding, but the path ahead was suddenly a minefield of moral and emotional choices that could destroy the fragile life she'd rebuilt. If you were Emily, how would you confront Chris's sudden demand for custody and the explosive truths colliding around her? As Chris's threat lingers in the summer air, one wrong move could tear apart everything Emily has fought for. What will she do when the past comes for her on her own doorstep? Emily's pulse hammered in her ears as Chris's words hung like poison in the thick August air. For months, she had dreamed of a future built on healing and quiet love, but now the past stood at her porch with a smirk and a threat. Lucas whimpered against her shoulder, sensing the storm in his mother's chest. Michael moved first, stepping between his daughter and the man he once thought fit to date her. "You've got some nerve," Michael snapped, his voice low but shaking. "You abandoned her. You wanted nothing to do with this child." Chris lifted his hands in mock surrender. "People change. I want my rights. Maybe I made mistakes, but I won't let my son be raised by the guy who ruined my career." His glare landed squarely on Ryan. Ryan's jaw tightened, but Emily could see the conflict in his eyes. Punching Chris would be satisfying, but it could also hand him ammunition in court. The unspoken truth chilled her. Chris might have a legal claim, however undeserving, and that possibility terrified her more than anything. Linda reached for Emily's arm, whispering, "You don't have to decide anything now." But Emily felt trapped. If she refused Chris entirely, would a judge see her as uncooperative? If she allowed him into Lucas's life, even briefly, what kind of chaos would that invite? And somewhere deep inside, an unwelcome pang of guilt. Lucas would one day ask about his biological father. What would she say? That she kept him away out of fear. Her heart ached with the weight of every choice. Chris took a step closer. "I have a lawyer already drafting papers. Maybe we can work something out without a fight," he said smoothly, but the edge in his voice betrayed his intentions. Ryan finally spoke, voice steady. "If you want a relationship with Lucas, it will be on Emily's terms. Not threats, not manipulation." Chris laughed bitterly. "Easy for you to say. You've been playing hero while I've been out trying to get my life together. You think your money makes you his father?" The jab hit its mark. Emily saw Ryan flinch, and it tore at her. For all his mistakes, he had been the one who stayed, who held her hand through labor, who rocked Lucas at 3 a.m. She wanted to scream that love was more than DNA or a paycheck, but the words caught in her throat. Then Michael, of all people, said the last thing Emily expected. Maybe he should get a chance to see the boy. Silence crashed over the porch. Linda stared at her husband in disbelief. Ryan's brows furrowed. Emily felt her knees go weak. Michael cleared his throat, voice rough. "I'm not defending him. God knows I despise what he did. But shutting him out completely, it might backfire legally. And Lucas deserves the truth someday. I made the mistake of letting pride and judgment drive my own daughter away. I won't watch another man's pride destroy this family too." The words landed heavier than any accusation. Michael was trying, in his own flawed way, to protect her. But could she stomach letting Chris within 10 feet of her child? Ryan placed a gentle hand on her back, grounding her. "This is your choice, Em. Not mine. Not your father's. Not his, yours." Lucas stirred, his tiny hand clutching her shirt, and Emily realized the battle wasn't just legal. It was for the future she wanted for her son. She looked at Chris, seeing not just the boy who abandoned her, but the man who could still wreck everything. Her voice, when it came, was steady but cold. "If you want to prove you've changed, you'll take a DNA test, go to counseling, and start with supervised visits. You mess up once, you're gone. And if you threaten custody again without proving yourself, I'll fight with everything I have." Chris blinked, caught off guard by her steel. For the first time since he arrived, his bravado cracked. "You'd really drag us through court?" Emily's grip on Lucas tightened. "Try me." The line between mercy and self-preservation had never felt so thin, and as Chris nodded stiffly, retreating toward his car, Emily knew this was only the beginning of a war she never wanted but couldn't avoid. Should Emily give Chris the opportunity to prove himself under strict conditions, or cut him out entirely despite the legal risk? As Chris's engine roared into the distance, a new storm brewed on the horizon, one that could pit love, blood, and loyalty against each other in ways none of them were ready to face. The night after Chris drove away, Emily sat awake by Lucas's crib, listening to the rhythmic whir of the baby monitor and the low hum of crickets outside. Ryan had fallen asleep on the couch, exhaustion etched into his face, but she couldn't rest. Her own words replayed in her head. DNA tests, supervised visits, conditions spoken with a strength she didn't know she had. Yet under that strength lived fear, whispering, what if? What if Chris really fought for custody? What if a judge sided with him? What if she lost Lucas, the one piece of pure love she'd fought for through hell? By morning, that fear hardened into resolve. She called a family lawyer, someone recommended by a friend of Linda's, to understand her rights. When the lawyer arrived later that week, a poised woman named Marissa, the conversation brought new shocks. Chris had already filed a petition with the court, not just for custody discussions, but alleging that Emily's living arrangement with Ryan was inappropriate and unstable. The words stung more than any insult Chris had ever thrown at her. He's painting you as dependent on a man unrelated to the child, implying financial coercion, Marissa explained gently. It's a common tactic. We can fight it, but you need to be prepared for ugly arguments. Emily felt her face burn with shame and anger. She thought of all the nights she stayed awake feeding Lucas while Ryan worked late into the night, both of them building a life brick by fragile brick. And now all of that was being twisted into a weapon. When she told Ryan about the petition, his expression darkened. He's trying to break you down. I won't let that happen. But Emily's voice cracked. What if the court believes him? What if my past, the park, the homelessness, what if they see me as unfit? Ryan knelt before her, taking her trembling hands. Then we show them the truth, that you're the strongest person I know, that you've built a home for Lucas, with or without me. His conviction steadied her for a moment, but a new dilemma gnawed at her heart. The lawyer had suggested something Emily hadn't expected, formalizing Ryan's role in Lucas's life, possibly through guardianship or adoption, to show stability. But that meant putting on paper what their hearts hadn't fully spoken, Ryan becoming not just her partner, but legally tied to Lucas. That night, as she watched Ryan cradle Lucas and hum softly, Emily felt the weight of the choice. Would it be selfish to ask Ryan to make that commitment under legal pressure? Would it even be fair to Lucas if Ryan later decided the burden was too much? Her chest ached with the tension between love and fear. The storm didn't stop there. Days later, a letter arrived from Chris's lawyer requesting a home visit evaluation. As Emily read the words, Lucas babbling in his playpen, she felt her stomach knot. Every corner of her life would be examined, every mistake magnified. And then a line at the bottom of the page made her freeze. The petitioner has also requested to call a character witness with knowledge of the respondent's conduct during her pregnancy. Her blood ran cold. Who could that be? She'd been alone under that oak, isolated from friends and family. Unless her mind went to the one person she hadn't heard from in months, someone who'd seen her at her lowest and walked away. Her father's pastor friend who had been there the day Michael told her to leave. If he testified about that scene, about her being cast out and desperate, how would it look? That evening she confided in Linda, who looked stricken. I'll talk to him, Linda said fiercely. If anyone tries to twist what happened that day, they'll have to go through me. Emily hugged her mother, gratitude and dread mingling. This was no longer just about Chris. It was about whether the truth of her pain would be weaponized and how much of herself she was willing to expose to protect Lucas. As night fell, she stood on the porch, looking out at the dark fields, feeling the weight of the coming battle. Somewhere behind her, Ryan stepped out, sliding his arm around her waist. We'll get through this, he murmured, but even his steady voice couldn't quiet the question clawing at her soul. How much more of her past would she have to bleed for her son's future? If you were Emily, would you risk exposing every painful part of your past to protect your child, even if it meant reliving your deepest wounds? As the court battle looms and an unexpected witness threatens to reopen old scars, Emily is about to face the most harrowing choice of her life, one that could define the future for all of them. The morning of the court hearing dawned gray, a thin mist settling over the fields as Emily dressed Lucas in his tiny blue sweater. Every motion felt heavy with meaning. She caught her own reflection in the mirror, a different woman from the one who'd slept under an oak months ago. Stronger, yes, but also worn by battles she never imagined fighting. Ryan waited by the truck, his face unreadable, a quiet storm behind his steady gaze. Linda and Michael followed in a separate car. Their presence still felt miraculous to Emily. As they entered the courthouse, the air smelled faintly of disinfectant and fear. Chris sat at the petitioner's table, suit ill-fitting, eyes sharp and restless. He didn't look at Emily. Her lawyer leaned close, whispering reassurance, but Emily's heart thudded so loudly she barely heard. The judge called the case, and the battle began. Chris's lawyer painted a picture of instability. A homeless young mother rescued by a wealthy man, a child growing up in a house of questionable boundaries. Each word felt like acid, reducing her story to a caricature of weakness. When her turn came, Emily rose, hands trembling but voice steady. She told the truth, about the night under the oak, about Lucas's first cry, about the family she was trying to build from broken pieces. She didn't hide her pain or her mistakes. She let them stand as proof that she had fought and kept fighting. There were tears in the courtroom, hers, Linda's, even Michael's, as he heard his daughter's pain laid bare under oath. Then the unexpected happened. Michael stood when the judge asked if any additional witnesses wanted to speak. His voice shook at first, but grew stronger. He admitted how his pride and fear had cast his daughter into the cold. He told the court about the night since then, holding his grandson, seeing the love and stability in Ryan's home. If being unfit means loving your child so fiercely you'd bleed for them, then my daughter is guilty, he said, voice breaking. But she is not unfit. She is the bravest person I know. Silence fell heavy. Chris looked down, his jaw tight. Then his lawyer called the pastor who had been there the day Emily was thrown out. Everyone braced for condemnation, but instead the older man's voice was thick with regret. He confessed he wished he'd stopped Michael that day, that what he witnessed was not moral failure from Emily, but from those who turned away. The tide shifted. The judge called a recess. Outside in the hallway, Chris approached Emily for the first time, eyes glassy. "I didn't expect them to defend you like that," he muttered. I thought you'd be alone like before." His voice cracked, and for a flicker, Emily saw the boy she once loved under the anger. "I can't be what he needs," he said, nodding toward Lucas and Ryan's arms. "But I want to try to be better. Not in court, just better." When the hearing resumed, Chris withdrew his petition. The judge finalized a custody agreement granting Emily full custody with voluntary visitation contingent on counseling. It wasn't a victory march. It was something quieter, truer. Weeks passed, and life settled. Chris began therapy. Sometimes he visited Lucas under Linda's supervision. Michael worked on repairing years of silence, slowly but sincerely. And Ryan, steady, patient Ryan, asked Emily one evening under a starlit sky if she and Lucas would finally share his last name. Her answer was yes, with tears and laughter. But the twist of life is that healing doesn't erase scars, it honors them. On Lucas's first birthday, Emily stood beneath the oak where it all began. The park was brighter now, no longer a place of exile, but of remembrance. She whispered a thank you to the scared, desperate girl she'd been for not giving up, for choosing to love her son even when it hurt. Ryan wrapped an arm around her waist. Lucas reached for the stars with tiny hands. And for the first time, Emily felt something close to peace. Her family wasn't perfect, but it was hers, built from second chances and stubborn love. And in that imperfection lay its beauty. How did this story make you feel overall, and what part touched you the most? Comment 100 if you enjoyed following Emily's journey. Which country are you watching from? Share this video with your friends to spread hope, and thank you for watching on Hope Stories.